Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome on the lecture where we are going to review the multi-tier architecture like the concept. Check why this model is in use now, and of course what the benefits and the problem we can have if we will use it. And let's start from the definition. What is the multi-tier architecture? This is the model of client-server architecture, which physically separate your environment into the layers, and base it on the level where your instance or application is. You define the accessibility of these resources to your data. I will explain what does it mean. Let's have a look on this picture. Here we have 4 layers, and the number is actually present what kind of multi-tier architecture we have. In this case we have 4-tier architecture type, where each level is responsible for their own functionality. And the main idea of this that levels can communicate only with his neighbor layers. So for example the presentation layer cannot reach the data layer, because no connectivity between them. And if they need to talk, they first need to pass the application layer and the business layer, which is providing you additional security and auditing of your traffic to data. And before we will deep dive on this schema, want to remind you that this is just one from possible variants. Means you can create type and have n-tier architecture model, where n will be the number of the tiers. For example, later we will build on AWS the model of 3-tier architecture, and I will just demonstrate how to make the network connectivity between them. On the picture now you can see 4-tier architecture. Let them check one by one. The first layer will be the presentation one. The resources which, on this level, can be visible from the internet. There can be any resources which you need to make visible. By default it's some proxy servers. They are getting from the internet the requests and route them on correct resources. It can be AWS load balancer or software version of the balancers. And their main responsibility to check all incoming requests, provide some user interface to the end users, and of course redirect traffic to other layers if it's required. The next level is application or service layer. The main functionality of this layer is to provide secured communication between the next layers on the row, the business one. On this layer is done the processing of incoming requests, validation of them, and forming correct and secure for the business perspective calls. The simple example of this can be application programming interface or API. That in result your next layer will get the request to the data on verified and correct format. On this layer also a lot of companies develop some security and auditing tool for some more control. Okay, the next will be the business layer. This is layer for application or the tools which actually can communicate with the last data layer. Here you can put your application which can read and modify your data which is critical to be secured. Because technically the application layer can have an access to the data. And of course the last will be the data layer, which is actually data is. Here you can put some storages or the data which is actually storing your information. That's the basic concept of 4-tier model. But on our course we are going to use the 3-tier architecture model. And to make more clear picture, let's review the flow of data between the layers. The start point will be the end user, which is trying to get data from our application. He is doing some requests and getting user interface with static information. For this is responsible our first layer, which I will call here the web or presentation layer. The next step for our end user will be the login action to our application. And when he put all data on some input fields on the user interface, then web layer redirect request to the application layer with all data provided by the user. On our application layer we can have some tool which are tracking requests and validate them. But still this layer is not have the information if this data which provided by the user is valid or no, because it's not storing here the actual data for application. So for the validation, the application layer should do request on the data or DB layer. Select the information from the database or other sources, compare with information which is provided by the user, and only after this return using web layer with the response with success or failure status. As you can see here, this flow is providing you security for your data, because isolate your database from end user. And this is actually our first benefit, is isolation. The next good side from our concept is flexibility. It's done because all these layers are separated from each other, and for example teams can be responsible only for the specific layer without affect each other. The third benefit, which is critical I think to have, is fault tolerance. Means if you even crash one layer, it will not affect others. For example, if you will fault your application layer for some reason, you still will be able to provide to end users the information that sorry, our application is on maintenance mode and will be back soon. This is better than just have timeout or HTTP error. The last big benefit will be the scalability. And again, it's done thanks to that all levels are independent. And you can scale them separately from each other. Means if you have big load on data layer, for example, because you have a lot of processing jobs, then you can just scale this part and not touch others. The multi-tier architecture has a lot more benefits as I presented now. I just show you the main ones on my point of view. But now time to talk about the disadvantages. And the first check which I wanted to mark is complexity of this architecture. You will need to maintain not only one application and database services and connection between them. On such schema, you will need to perform the network connectivity between few layers and always monitor them. The next problem is related to the latency of the traffic. Because on such schema you will have more points to proxy requests, the response can be slower than direct connect. And from this we have another disadvantage, is costs. You will need to pay for this traffic, you will need to pay for these resources, so sometimes it can be pretty much expensive. We can talk a lot about this and find much more advantages and the problems. But I just wanted to describe you the few main ones, which you will face for sure if you will start to use this approach. For now I wanted to finish this lecture and move to the practical steps. There I will show you how to organize the network connectivity on AWS using this architecture type. So thanks for watching, here was Kostya, see you!